Okay, I was at Dayton, and the war came along. There was a draft at the time, and we were advised at school that all male students should join the reserves, and that the Army would call us, or Navy, would call us up when they needed us. And as it turned out, for pre-med students, the rule was if you stayed in school and got good grades and were presumably going to be accepted for medical school, that they'd keep you in school. And that's what happened with me. And so I went from, I was, on the day medical school started, I was inducted into the Army at Fort Hays in Columbus as a private first class and sent to Ohio State.
Hmm. So you're actually in the Army when you were going to med school?
Yeah. We had to fall out in formation before classes in the morning.
Wow. So let me back up just a second. At that time, had you discerned what specialty that you would pursue? Did you think about radiology, or was it just...
No, I was thinking family practice.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say was the what then brought you to radiology?
Well, what brought me to specialize was my experience in family practice. I was in a situation up in North Star and Fort Recovery, Ohio, both very small towns. I thought I was competent, but when I needed help, I really didn't have it. I couldn't refer somebody to somebody I was confident in knowing was going to be an improvement on what I could do for them.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, when I was in Fort Recovery, then the Korean conflict came about. And it seemed apparent that since the Army had largely paid for my medical education, that I would be inducted.
Sure.
And I didn't wait. I decided to, since I didn't like general practice too well at that stage, and since I knew it was going to happen, I took a ride up to Lima and joined the enlisted reserve and applied for immediate active duty. And within 3 months of that, I was a first lieutenant now in the Army Medical Corps.
Wow.
And my initial orders called for going to Fort Sam Houston for medical basic training. And about 10 days before I was to go, I got some more orders saying, those orders are rescinded. Report instead on January 1st to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
So
you were asking about radiology. Prior to that, during my internship, and then while I was in service, every chance I'd get, when there was nothing else going on, I'd go up to radiology and watch them read films.
where did you do your internship?
St. Elizabeth's in Dayton.
Mm-hmm. That's no longer there, I don't think.
It's no longer there, right?
Where would this fit into? There was a time you had a mentor, I think, by the name of Ben Felsen. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. When I got out of the Army, well, while I was in the Army, I decided I would like to specialize. And I would like to specialize in radiology. And I found out that St. Elizabeth's in Dayton had a residency in radiology, and I knew the guy, Jim Ty, was a radiologist, and so I applied and was accepted there and spent a year there. And toward the end of that year, not quite, but almost, the Sister Superior replaced the radiology group that was covering the hospital. They hired a young guy on a salary rather than the arrangement that they had before. And so I was a little bit, the radiologist that replaced him was a nice guy, fairly knowledgeable, but he said, you know, he encouraged me to try to find my second and third years elsewhere, because he was not a teacher, he didn't have the academic situation. And it so happened that Ben Felsen from the University of Cincinnati, Cincinnati General Hospital, came to Dayton one day a week, one afternoon a week, to conduct a film reading session at the Veterans Center, the VA hospital there. And I had heard about it, and I went over, and it was Kurt worthwhile. He was a very learned guy and very easy guy to listen to and admire. And so at this point, I approached him and told him my situation. He said, well, he said, it so happened that the resident that was supposed to return for his second year was not coming back. He said, let me think about it. Well, he called me back either that night or the night before. He said, well, if you can make up your mind in the next 24 hours, I'll take you on. Well, there wasn't any question in my mind. Of course, it was not an easy situation as far as the family is concerned, because we had to move again after many times. By that time, Ellen had been born, and but we did. And Ben was a extremely intelligent, extremely good teacher. I saw an article in the alumni magazine of University of Cincinnati just 2 or 3 months ago that described him as the greatest radiology of his time. And I don't think many people have argued that. So I was extremely fortunate to fall into that situation.
And then at some point you decide to move someplace else, right?
Well, it was, the thing to do when you're a trained radiologist, you're looking for a job.
Right.
And I actually didn't look very long. I think Dr. Felsen told me that Dr. Jones had contacted him. He was looking for a partner, and I was invited to come up for a week while Dr. Jones took a week off. He went to Florida or something. And Ann came up with me maybe the weekend after that or something. I think the practice itself was not too attractive in terms of the facilities that the hospital had, but the town appealed to us. We thought it was a relatively small community, 12,000 people, I think, at that time. And they had 12 years of Catholic education, which we were interested in. And that was sold us.
So what were the facilities like when you walked into the hospital?
I don't know. By present-day standards, they were unbelievably bleak. I mean, we had 2 X-ray machines, and a room about this big to dictate reports in. But it was made the patient load no less enjoyable, and I felt, I guess, very confident when I came here that I knew everything there was to know. I was able to establish a good relationship with the rest of the medical staff. And Dr. Jones was going to pay me $1,000 a month, which is a big salary at that time by our previous standards. And then he had indicated at the end of the year he would consider bringing me in as an associate, as a partner. That happened. And while talking about, Dr. Jones was an extremely smart guy, extremely good man, and I can't say enough about him.
So, did you go through an interview process with him before coming here, or what was that process like?
Not much. He took, I think, Dr. Felson's recommendation that I would work out. I mean, we didn't. He may have taken us to dinner one night or something, but.
So you started off this. You didn't look at any other town other than Lancaster.
I actually did not.
That's amazing.
Although I knew there were many other opportunities. At that stage, there were people advertising in medical journals for help and so forth.
And did you, just to back up a little bit, what's always amazed me about you is that you kind of have always known what you were going to do, sort of, to me anyway. Would it be correct at some point you just knew you were going to be a doctor and you just went about
Somehow, during high school, I guess, I always liked the sciences, chemistry and physics and so forth, and following up on the priesthood situation. A nun, the reason I remember some of the magi is this nun was named Sister Mary Casper. And she called me in during my senior year to quiz me as to whether I had any, why don't you go to the priesthood, why don't you go to seminary or something. And I just kind of flat out told her I wanted to be a doctor. And her remark was, well, all good doctors have one foot in the seminary.
You went about the business of practicing medicine here in town, and I know you always got up very early in the morning to get to the hospital.
Well, at that time, when I joined G. Fred Jones, he was covering the hospital in Nelsonville also. And he would go down there 2 half days a week. And so when that came up, we continued to do that. And then we were approached by Logan, by Hocking Valley Hospital, to provide radiology services there. And we decided to do it, and so we went to 3 days a week, going to Logan and then to Nelsonville and then back through Logan and here, while the other guy was here all day. And in order to get things done, my work ethic was such that I got up I was in Logan on the way down by 6, so I got up at 5:20 or something like that.
But you would get to the Lancaster Hospital early as well, even when you didn't go to Logan.
Yeah, I would go in fairly early because, well, we instituted a program when we got a full-time emergency room coverage. Dr. Voyne and his group, they decided that they didn't need us to come in at night to read films. Prior to that, we saw every film that was taken day or night. And so I thought, well, we decided that wasn't. So we asked them to use a log sheet, patient's name, and a brief diagnosis that they had from the x-ray. And we would check it, and I tried to get there before 7 o'clock in the morning in order to monitor that situation before they left, before the guy on that shift left.
What was medicine like? Contrast what it was like when you walked into the hospital to what it was like when you walked out.
Well, Medicare had happened in the meantime. Came in 1966, I think. And that changed things immensely as far as, not as far as we were concerned, but as far as the practicing physician, private practicing. There were guys, doctors here in town who refused to participate in Medicare. They said, well, they tell their patients, if you can't pay me, I'm not going to fill out those papers. Now that didn't last very long, I don't think, but there weren't many specialists in town when I came in town. Dr. Wilford Nussbaum was a surgeon, and Dr. George Lassar was a surgeon, and we really didn't have an internist. Dr. Gordon Snyder came in. He came in 1960, 5 years after I did. We came in 55. And there was no internist, bona fide internist.